Cataloging Cocktails, presented by Data.World. It's your honest, no BS, non-salesy conversation about enterprise data management with tasty beverages in hand. I'm Tim Gasper, longtime data nerd, product guy, customer guy at Data.World, joined by co-host Juan Cicada.
Hey, Tim. I'm Juan Cicada, principal scientist at Data.World. And as always, it's a pleasure. It is Wednesday, middle of the week. Today, we shifted things a little bit, so it's still early in the day. But I know there's folks up on the other side of the pond who it's probably now appropriate to have your cocktail. We are here Wednesday and super excited to finally have a guest who is a long-time listener, and I'm super excited that she's finally here and to chat about all stuff AI governance, data governance. Karen, how are you doing?
Hey, great. I am excited to be here. And yes, long-time listener, first-time caller, to join in on a conversation that is definitely a hot topic and definitely something that I think warrants more discussion.
Yeah, no,
super excited. I can't wait for our topic today.
Yeah, well, we're going to kick it off. Karen, who's director of client services at Hakoda. Let's kick it off with our tell and toast. So what are we drinking and what are we toasting for today? Karen, how about you?
Yes. So I had to think about that, considering it's 8:30 in the morning for me. My first thought was Bloody Mary, but that sounds like a lot of work for me. So I found something that I thought might be appropriate. I have a Shibui whiskey, and so there's a little nod to Hakoda. Hakoda is a nod to, it's just one of the snowiest places on Earth, and Hakoda is a snowflake partner, and so I thought, hey, there's a theme. So here is my my whiskey in the morning.
Wow,
a Japanese whiskey to get it going.
You are truly dedicated to the cocktail cause. Even I have not done it properly. I'm just drinking some coffee.
I mean, I have a coffee
highlight my really cool
too, but hey,
Austin FC cup. I do like my little Yeti cup.
Put some Irish whiskey or some whiskey into my coffee here. Do that. I'm having coffee, but cheers to you, Karen. Cheers to you to being listening to us for so long. I just want to go cheers like all our listeners. We've been doing this for almost close to 4 years, and we just do it because it's just so freaking cool that we have the opportunity to meet so many cool people like you, Karen, and somehow get to impact people's lives around this stuff. So thank you, Karen. Yeah, to you, Karen. Cheers.
Right, gotcha. Thank you.
So given that our topic today is about lifting and shifting, so our warm-up question is, how many times have you moved?
How many times have I moved? Geez, I'm getting closer, if I were to guess, around 10 times. It's a very traumatic experience, actually. I've heard somewhere that up there with like funerals and managing, the death of a loved one, moving is equally traumatic and up there in terms of how it affects you.
Yeah, I'm counting right now. How many times?
How many times have you moved, Juan?
So I think I've done 6 major city country big movements, but within cities I've also moved a lot. So my parents, my parents love to kind of change things up and get a new house and change a house, and to the point that even still today that they don't even tell me. I remember once, like before, like during COVID, like they did this weird thing that they built a house and they didn't tell anybody. And then I came one day to go visit them, like right after COVID. And I'm like, where are you taking me? They're, well, look at what we did. I'm like, so I kind of grew up stuff like that. So I probably have switched houses between 15 and 20 times.
Whoa.
Yeah.
That is a lot.
And I freaking hate it. And I'm super happy that in the house I'm right now, I've been there since 2019, and my wife and I are like, we're not leaving anywhere. We're staying put. We love it. So
this is home.
You can't say that out loud because you put it into the universe, and it just
crap.
Knock on wood.
How about you, Tim?
I've traveled a bunch of different places, especially in the States, but never. I haven't moved that often in terms of cities. I grew up and I went to school in Cleveland, and then I moved to Austin. I've been here in Austin for almost 15 years now. I think I've lived in maybe 4 or 5 different places in Austin, but I have a house now in Austin. So I have the luxury of like not having to have moved very often. My wife and I keep on thinking like, oh, should we move into a bigger house? And then we think about the pain of moving and all that. And we're like, nah.
No, I can't even. Okay. Anyways, let's not talk about that. Let's talk about other things that people are considering to move between data and AI. All right, Karen, honest, no BS. What is AI governance and how is this related to data governance?
So AI governance is a reference to using what I'll say machine learning and creation of some type of what I'll call data product, generative AI within that family of making sure that all the guideposts are met to make your desired outcomes or your data product that is either a machine learning tool or Gen AI, for example, aligned to getting your desired outcomes, that it meets your regulatory obligations, it is being respectful of the human being's data that is included to provide you those insights, and that it also is something that is easily understood as well. I'm sure we'll talk more about that. So one of the things that I wanted to call out as well is that everybody has their own definition of governance, but even within AI governance, I noticed a tension when you're defining it between what I'll call more GRC type governance, GRC meaning governance, risk, and compliance, which is more like the legal validation audit type approach for data management. And then there's more the AI governance focus of, from an analytics standpoint, what we would align more of what you see with DAMA domains and practices as it relates to data quality and fundamentals. And so what I've noticed is that there's a lot of silos, even between the folks who are attorneys or privacy engineers or pursuing compliance in that perspective of checking the boxes and making sure that you're following ethical or privacy aware best practices. And then there's the analytics folks who are coming from a data team that have their shaking the stick about what AI governance means, and that even then there's a disconnect.
Are both of them right? Because you have kind of an expansive definition, I think, here. I think that's a good thing around AI governance. Is it all of this? Is that all AI governance?
Well, short answer is well, yes, and it depends. In terms of the context of what you're doing and the nature of the family of I hand wave AI, because that can mean a lot of different subdomains within that broad umbrella of AI. But yes, it is something that does need to be addressed. I do think it means all of it in truth, and that you definitely have to take the analytics data management perspective and then also the GRC standpoint. All of it really needs to be done, and they're all making valid points of what's being missed or what should be prioritized.
So, I think maybe to go to another sort of honest, no BS question here that's closely related to what we started with. Is there a difference between like fundamentally AI governance and broader data governance? Because there seems to be a feeling in the community, the data community, the governance community, that there's something different. Like AI governance is a new beast to be tamed. And certainly there's new technology at play here, but like how different are we talking?
Well, I mean, yes, I think what is happening is more that tension of those that have been working in data and analytics and more traditional, I guess we'll say, analytics data management, are noticing that the GRC folks are making a lot of noise as it relates to regulations and compliance and just the harms of what are those secondary effects whenever you have an LLM that's put into production that affects people's lives or decisions on getting a loan or something like that. So what I think that's the true disconnect. In truth, yes, you do need to do the basics before you can do the shiny things, which I've mentioned a few times, which is something that I think that the folks who have been in analytics, data management, data governance realm have been making a lot of noise about is like, yes, data quality matters. Where I think, and as it relates to making sure you have data sets that you're training on that are you can do something with, or that is which is a challenge unto itself. Where I think we get into a different definition is that you can pick, DCAM, DAMA, whatever domains of like what we define as traditional data management and data governance. There are distinctly different concerns to be aware of when it relates to using AI and ML that are different. When you say accurate in the context of data management, that refers to making sure that that's a dimension of your data quality domain. Accuracy as it relates to AI, an LLM, I'll just call it AI for now, so we can move it forward. But that relates to the focus of your use case and how you're delivering your insights or answers, or the focus of your AI agent, for example. And so to me, I think there's that difference. And then it comes to, explainability of the model. That is something that is different and not something that we've been doing that matters for many reasons, just that transparency of what exactly are you doing. And privacy awareness, yes, privacy awareness you should do no matter what, as it relates to your data that's you're providing insights on in whatever context. Where it's different is that once you have your trained model, it becomes intellectual property, the totality of it, right? And so if you have training data that may be providing really powerful insights to make decisions or change behavior for a business, or something that's valued in the market, if it's including someone's PII, then that is something that creates big problems, or has, and even in the US, that's one, that's not okay. But two, if there's a violation that's called out by the FTC, then you can't easily pull out all of the data that was used to create this LLM or AI agent. And so there's concepts like disgorgement, or just being asked to destroy the model that you're using, which is not a desired outcome after you spent a considerable amount of time and money getting there. And so going through there, I think there are different data handling and security controls that are just different because of the nature of how you can corrupt and modify the data similarly. And then I think something that I see constantly on LinkedIn is this gotcha of fairness and bias. Show me a picture of a CEO, and I feel like several times a day I see someone posting a picture of like a older white man of like, see the bias. Yes, that's a thing too, and it does have consequence when you're focusing on other things beyond creating pictures. Yes, I think the point is that much of what's used in the training data is a reflection of what's in real life of who we are, how we think, and what we do, and that there is bias all around us. What you do about that, though, is something that can get very complicated or controversial, and also, though, is something that's a difference from what we do on a day-to-day basis and within analytics, data management, and data governance.
There's a lot to unpack here, and what's going through my head is like seeing this a Venn diagram and an overlap between what is what we're calling AI governance and data governance. And in particular, I really liked how you called out the GRC, the governance, risk compliance, and the analytic governance. And so there's like the overlap there is things when it's about kind of the PII is usually one of the things, right? GDPR, all these compliance type of stuff, right? So those are all the things that we are kind of regulations are kind of being afraid that bad things will happen right there. So there's that overlap. And then there's other things that will that still fall into the GRC governance, the GRC governance, which may not be such a big focus or not a focus at all for the analytics governance, like things in like biases, or like come from images and stuff like that. Like the analytics, you don't, that's not your world, right? So that type of stuff is not specifically for you. Now, okay, well, I mean, if you start creating these big, larger models that if you're building a model based on the data you have, which is your customer base or whatever, like, well, that's the facts of the organization, right? I'm like,
right.
So you're not trying to figure out more biases or kind of balance the biases. There's like, you just train with what you have right there.
Right.
But then there's also things that the governance, that they call it the analytics governance, they're doing, but it's not a big focus in the AI governance, especially because it ends up being all this more images and text. So going back to like the data quality and all these things, it's like that is a focus on when you're talking about structured data. But when you're seeing a lot of this AI governance over AI, it's more about this unstructured, specifically text, documents, images. So I think that's the difference that we have to do. And I think, and to call out kind of a post that today Malcolm Hawker put out there, it was based on a conversation Tim and I were having with him a couple of days ago. It's like, wait, a disconnect. I think you're bringing up also the silos that we're seeing here is that you have people saying, oh, the data folks saying, oh, AI needs to have governance, you have quality data, but actually the AI work that's happening, it's not dealing with the structured data that has to deal with the data quality. So a lot of people are just kind of like, they just want to be loud, as you said, they're making noise, but sometimes they're like, that noise is not helping anybody. Like, just go figure. I mean, you haven't even figured it out yourself yet. I don't know. I'm ranting now. I'm going to stop. Does that make sense?
Absolutely. I mean, and I think this is part of, let's acknowledge that this is new to everyone, and that there are AI experts that are bubbling up left and right, often in our LinkedIn echo chamber. And so I think and what I've noticed though, is you can see for those that are talking, throughout the community, that of people who have done it and have a little scar tissue to show for it, and those that are posting for clicks, right? And I think I think it's important to acknowledge that we're learning, and that there are a lot of valid points that we need to bring in to the iteration or the life cycle development experience of delivering value, which is the whole point of it, of something that supports the strategic goals of whatever business you're working in, and that there are real consequences to what you're putting out into the world that affect people's lives, and to be aware of that. And so I think there's so many frameworks that folks are competing of, like the end all be all of what needs to be considered. And I think the point is that that's just calling out the disparity of how everybody's experiencing and working with the umbrella of all the different domains within AI to deliver what's meaningful of within their organization, or how they interact with their customers. And that's really the point of that. Yes, there are different governance expectations and outcomes for unstructured data, semi, and then what we're more used to is the more structured data, and what you can do with it. And it's not that it isn't being discussed so much, but I think that it's being managed differently. And the GRC folks, as far as from their perspective, from a privacy engineering perspective, are the ones that are more hands-on in that domain. And that's perhaps why there's a perception that from the analytics governance folks, that it's not being looked at because we don't talk to each other often.
So is it just jealousy from the?
I don't know about that.
Well, I mean, look, it's like we all talk about. Well, we're in the data world. Right? We're trying to make organizations be data driven, right? And the data scientist is the sexiest job. Like, oh, we have to look what we can do. And now comes the wave of generative AI, which is like very first kind of text and stuff, and then all eyes just go to that. All funding goes to that. And I'm like, well, hey, me. And then everything goes there. And then they start talking about using the word governance. And then we're like, but we've been talking about governance over here. We haven't been paying, you're not paying attention to but it's kind of different. It's a different game, and so I don't know. Part of me says is like, yeah, we just are kind of we're not being part of that. The cool kids club has moved somewhere else, and we're not part of it.
Oh, I would argue, at least from my perspective, that the folks that are in data or the analytics data space are probably driving the narrative a lot more than the GRC folks. But I have my own bias that I'll bring to the table. What I will say, though, is that it's undeniable that there's the hype cycle of the expectations of what AI is supposed to do. And I think where we've been seeing the most adoption is in the spaces where there's manipulation of data as it relates to selling and marketing to people, to customers. And so that's also where you have a high degree of harms that can be experienced by those human beings. And in the US, for example, there's very little agency that an individual has to pursue harms against them. And so you're really just left to sit and take it. And that's really more where I think the GRC folks are speaking up. I think the more brick and mortar or more traditional enterprise organizations are still, for the ones that did get budget and got caught up in the FOMO, I think what you're seeing now is the reality of what it takes to really create a meaningful production ready LLM or agent that helps the business, and also realizing what it can and can't do. It is not going to fold your socks and make sure that and predict the future as like the Oracle at Delphi. Like, to be realistic of your expectations. I don't know if you're familiar with the Cinefin framework of just like making sure that it's a problem that the Cinefin frame. Well, I'm just about to tangent on sounding like a big dork for.
No, please
continue.
Please continue. This is I'm getting more comfortable now. I want to learn this.
So it's a 4-box of just how you define a problem and whether it can be solved or how you solve it. And the point is, fast forwarding, is that make sure your goals for what you're asking of your AI agent are realistic for what it's made to do, and to not overextend it of thinking that it can do it's more than what it is, right? We are still, I think it's best to qualify it. I heard, think of it as your best intern, and that it's something that can facilitate a lot of more manual repetitive processes, for example, with your oversight, as opposed to fully deploying something to be standalone, to do something to duplicate your work. We still need a thinking subject matter expert to decide whether it's right or wrong, to give feedback for tuning purposes. And I think that's more where a lot of folks just don't know and are learning along the way. And I think it's more important to call that out and similarly within our AI governance experience of, we're learning there are so many frameworks. In truth, you need to find your framework that works best for you and your use cases and your team that you work with as it relates to, who you're interacting with or who the beneficiary is of your AI agent, let's say. And then also just the best practices, as much as we have like SDLC practices and it's involved in data ops, I think there's also something to be said that it's a blend of a lot of that, plus to bring in the right people, human beings at the right time to make sure that you're talking through the implications and staying on top of it, even deployed to production, monitoring, to make sure it's doing what you're expecting it to do, and also being able to intervene at the appropriate time and recognize when there are problems accordingly. Because just like you have, observability activities for whatever's in your data stack. Similarly, you have different guideposts when we talk about, like model poisoning, bad things can happen. There's a lot of different things you can do to your data set that can have cascading negative consequences, and plan for that accordingly. Mm-hmm. And I think that's the part that everyone's still learning. And I think everyone should be okay calling that out and acknowledge this is a learning experience. But also, if you're using that AI agent for within a business context, interacting with customers, that you need to be very thoughtful about how it's being used, because it is affecting human beings. I think they're in the news, we had Air Canada. Just there's been a few things in the news, but most recently, they have a chat bot. Sounds pretty benign. That somebody was talking about, or talking with a chat bot at Air Canada about booking bereavement fare, and asked a question that related to, okay, what should I do with what's the bereavement policy when his grandmother died? And the feedback that it gave the guy talking to the chatbot was that he should book the travel and then submit for a refund. And as a result, there is material consequences that Air Canada is being held accountable for that feedback. So, I mean, that's a real consequence that also has monetary impacts. And then separately, what I've been seeing is that there's been some traction in calling out an oldie but a goodie, a law in the U.S. for wiretapping, the Wiretapping Act. And then if it's a third-party chatbot that's capturing your communications on somebody else's, on your data platform or on your website, that's something that has material consequence as well. And so, I mean, these are things to talk about, but I think also are being kind of tested in the courts, and also from a data management perspective of like, what's realistic, and also for what it costs from a FTE standpoint, meaning all the human beings, all the intelligent human beings that have to contribute, and the time and money, significant budget that it costs for training your data, tuning it, to bring it to production. Like, is that realistic for your desired outcomes to make it a worthwhile expense for everyone?
Mm-hmm.
I love this. The whole this is a T-shirt. Be realistic. Or like, is that realistic?
Right.
I love it. By the way, what is the name of this framework?
The Cinefin framework. Let me CYN framework. Yeah, CYNE FIN.
Okay. Yes. Interesting. I think this is an interesting topic area we just hit, which is kind of around use case governance, not just around kind of what's realistic, but also, for a second there, I thought we were in analytics governance land, but then it kind of then came back to GRC again too, because there's an impact on our legal obligations. I mean, like if a chatbot says, "Hey, you can do something," which actually isn't the policy, is a corporation liable for bad advice that a chatbot offers? And and the answer is probably. I mean, like if you have if that is a representative of your company, right? And this goes into architecture too. I know there's a technical aspect of this too, right? Like, you want to control these experiences, govern these experiences, where maybe in that situation, rather than it actually prescribing the policy, it should have said, hey, here is where you can read up on our bereavement policy, or here is the phone number you can call in order to learn more about the policy, right? But it actually went and it proposed something. So this creates a lot of interesting things here. So I think what I'm seeing from this conversation is that even though they share common foundations, broader data governance and AI governance aren't wholly the same. You can't just kind of, going to this whole lift and shift or, kind of analogy we want to give here. There's not just a lift and shift of sort of data governance to AI governance. There's new things to take into consideration and extended aspects of the foundation, which you have to take into account.
Absolutely. Yes. Well, and I think that's the point, in that I find myself in that push and pull between it's its own culture unto itself, like the privacy practitioners at so many large organizations that are jumping in and doing what's called privacy engineering, to those that are on the cybersecurity side. And the point is, I think the new normal is that that's what governance is and will be, and that I've seen tension from every point of view of that. Like, I've learned and working with the privacy folks that they don't have an awareness of like what master data management is and the impact of that as it relates to consistency in your data for changes that may occur, or updates that that's one thing that I've noticed. And then separately, as we were calling out, that the analytics governance folks, when you think of that have been doing data governance thus far, see their boundaries as it relates to, you know, a lot of the frameworks we've already been talking about of DAMA or DCAM or whatever. And so they usually see a hard line when you go over to like the cybersecurity folks, like the privacy folks, where that's the legal team. I'm not an attorney, but it's really something that you have to have awareness of, because you have to do all of it. And then the question is, what's the most efficient way to do it? I mean, I've learned it more because I feel like I've needed to MacGyver my way through a lot of things of like, I need to figure this out. But I mean, what does that look like in real life for us going forward for a tenable governance experience to do what's right, and also to deliver something that the CEO or the CFO gets excited about in terms of what we delivered for from what we originally set up in our business case when we started the experience, right?
Yeah. And what I find really interesting about this is that you're saying, if I understand correctly, is like this new normal, which is going to be more about having privacy, like a big focus on privacy, cybersecurity. But then that means that it's, again, I always talk about the pendulum swings. So it seems like we're like swinging the pendulum all to one side because of like, oh, bad things can happen. But there's also these core data management practices that are not well known, kind of coming from the privacy security side. That there may be privacy security issues there, but there's just more education that needs to be happening across all these different silos that we're seeing right now. So it begs the question is like, we're in an organization, how is this all being managed? Like, you have data governance offices, and then people doing AI, and like people in their security in other places. Is like, just by how things are structured, everything is siloed, and like, how is this all going to start connecting or not? I don't know.
I mean, the reality is nobody's talking to each other, and I think that's pretty consistent. What I've learned is that it's confusing often when I may land in like a data team where we're working on pulling together their data stack and working on perhaps creating some data products together, to ask for, hey, who leads your compliance team? Who is responsible for your risk management? Can we bring them in now and make them a part of the experience? And often that's just, there are a lot of follow-up questions like, why would you do that? And so I think that's just an emotion for everyone. What does it look like going forward? That's a great question. And I think it's more, what I think will happen that organizations will change when it's worth their while to do it. As with anything else, if it behooves them to improve, value streams and turn it into something that affects the P&L, I think that's when there will be true change. And that's more where I also think that there is that tension, which is, I definitely understand where the GRC folks are coming from. Absolutely. I also understand what the folks in like the MarTech space are working on and why what they're trying to do. And that's where I think the point is to show that you can make considerable, deliver really powerful, profitable multiples of revenue by doing the right thing, by being privacy aware, by being compliant. And I think that's really what the point is, as compared to what I have seen, which is there's zero awareness often of, for those data scientists and data engineers that are working together to just ingest all the data and come up with some incredible insights and behavior, but without any acknowledgement of a human being's information that really is like surveillance type information about behavior, location, so that they can be better marketed to, or all of that sold to somebody else as a package. Like, I think that's where either there's going to be an inflection point where something really catastrophic happens to get everyone's attention, or I'm hoping more by setting patterns of doing the right thing, of that we can better align organizations so that all the folks within the data teams and compliance and risk and privacy, or the legal teams, all work together. Like, we all must work together in a cross-functional team. That really is the only way to work together, primarily because it takes a whole lot of time to go speak with everybody individually, but also it's the right thing to do. And I think it's more moving away from more tribal, but like fiefdoms, or more like feudal system, which is really where we're at the moment for most organizations.
Yeah, no,
I have my goals, you have your goals that are aligned for the year. I'm looking out for me, and I don't get in my way. And often what I've noticed as well is that they may conflict in some way, where to reach their said annual goals and stuff. So yeah, it's a challenge. And great call out, Juan.
No, that's really a huge challenge. And one thing that gets triggered, it's sort of related to this, but a slightly different topic, is I know before we started doing our live show today, we were talking a little bit about data products and data mesh approach and things like that, right? And how do you see data products fitting into the picture around AI and AI governance? And is that going to help with some of these problems around fiefdoms and these different silos?
Yeah, I want to add to that. It's like we're continuous to talk about all the silos, just the culture of people silos, and I wonder if this is a way how we all rally up together to start the communication. It's like, okay, we may all have different perspectives, we have different goals, but what we can agree on is that this thing here would make value for all of us. So let's go figure out this thing. And I'm kind of holding something. I mean, this is the product, which I'm kind of doing
the product, and then the governance. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. Anyway.
We're gesturing for our listeners.
That's right. Right. Yeah. And so let's take a few steps back. I'm a founding member of the data product leadership community that Brian O'Neill started. And what really caught my attention many years ago was listening to a podcast with him talking about something that I saw over and over again, which is that the data team creates a report of some sort, analytics. It's really moved into ML and AI, but the gist of it is they put a lot of time and effort they get requirements, they deliver the report, and then the end user says either that's not what I wanted at all, or they just never use it. And so I kept seeing that over and over again. And the point is that data product is more a verb, in the sense that it's the process of how you create that outcome, which engages a cross-functional team with all the folks that should be involved at the beginning, and that you create together either, first the process flow that you're looking to evaluate, and all the points where the personalities or personas interact, and you decide together the intersection of the persona, let's say a customer, and the order cycle at a particular point where you see that as the highest value starting point to create that data product. And then you work together with someone from the tech team that understands what's under the hood, someone from finance and accounting who understands how you make your money, a senior leader who understands your strategic goals, someone who interacts with the customer, subject matter experts on the domains, and to make sure that they're all involved at the beginning And then you take that prototype and do a short round of typically 5 folks to interview and interact with your rough prototype before you even write a line of code. And the power of that is that, one, you're collaborating with everyone at the beginning rather than them seeing at the MVP phase for the first time. That you get, I think, you hit on the org change management part of it, that you took the time to ask, and that they're now getting muscle memory to talk to each other. So you, speaking of governance, have basically your governance council for that use case when you're done. And that when you're going through and creating it, also, it's very structured and using the Cinefin framework, that you are asking the right question and solving the right problem at the beginning. And the power of that is really the output of the data products, as opposed to it being more like an analytics insight or an AI agent. And so that's where it's very powerful, I think. Not so much, it's the data product is meaningful and can be in a decentralized data mesh, meaning like your domains for finance and marketing, where you're bringing the subject matter experts that are closest to the business, who know the business best, and bringing down those barriers to identify the insights quickly, but also having a repeatable process that everybody, can get on board with, to do that verb to deliver the data product. And the data product then, obviously, you can work with governance. Agility is the concept of what you see in like a data ops platform, or, which is the permutation from SDLC to what we in the cloud, that it's included. So that's not something that you have this great idea and then you spend for months or years because of your technology, but that's more an enabler of the business, rather than the technology being the outcome. And similarly, the data product is the outcome of the people and processes, which is the most important part.
This segment right now has so many golden nuggets. And what I really, really enjoyed listening to you right now is that it tied basically everything that we had discussed earlier today. I mean, talking about, I love how you say it's the process around this, and you want to have the people from the beginning, right? So then that's how we were previously talking. It's like you should bring in folks from the legal, the privacy stuff. So that's, you start bringing them in from the beginning around that stuff, right? And then you tie it back to the framework, the Cinefin framework, and so we know that we're actually focusing on something, we're solving the right problem, that it's something realistic. We're not just going off and throwing things out, like coming up with something some magic stuff that we really can't do or can't do yet. Right. And then tying this back to the analytics governance and the AI governance, and then the risk compliance governance, and also thinking about the structured data and unstructured data. It's like, heck, if it is just a data product about unstructured, like here's all the documentation about our product, and we're going to go create an AI agent that's going to build this. We're going to do a chatbot. Well, then the first product right there is going to be like all the sets of documents that we know is this the latest version of it? Like, do we know that this is the latest stuff, right? Can we go trust the stuff that's in here? Like, now we start bringing in those same practices that kind of are that the data folks have been doing when it comes to like, what is trust? Is this high quality? I knew that. Absolutely. And then
there's a big difference between a single source of truth and master data, if we want to get super pedantic. But yes, absolutely. Trust is the point, is that it's trusted, right?
And then we actually know who the consumer of that's going to be, right? And what are the implications of putting this all in training on that stuff, right? So we just have all those conversations from the beginning. And then at that point you say, yeah, well, this first version is only going to use this text, fine. But as a good product management, you're like, well, what could happen later? What could be the next steps that we could dive then into some text, some structured data, stuff like. So I think we need to start thinking more about the data products as is. Again, one is that verb, the process, and it's not just about the structured data, which I kind of feel it ends up being there, right? Oh, it's living in my warehouse or stuff like that. It's like, no, it can be any type of data from structured and unstructured. That's the way. So having this conversation about products, it's what's really going to start uniting all these different silos that we have. I know That's the takeaway I'm having. I'm feeling really happy about this because it's like I've been seeing a lot of disconnect, and this is helping me figure out how to connect them. I'm actually gonna ping Malcolm right now, saying, "Hey, you gotta." I'm curious.
I feel like we should like have a big discussion. I'm a big fan of Malcolm as well. Yeah, and he makes a valid point. We all need to come to the table. I would argue we need to bring some of the folks that are making a lot of noise from what I'll say the GRC space. I don't know if they would appreciate being called that, but representatives who are speaking about the more cybersecurity voice being in the room, as well as privacy leaders. It's all important, and it all needs to be discussed and included in the experience.
Yeah, anyways, I just texted Malcolm right now.
So.
Great. Tim, you got any? Because we can keep going, but we gotta start wrapping up soon with our lightning rounds and takeaways.
Yeah, I mean, maybe a lightning round question before the lightning round, except it's an open lightning round. Is there's some good, like Malcolm had a great post today around AI governance, right? There's also a lot of, I think, Karen, what we kind of called like theater. There's like social theater going on right now as well. Do you have any, recommendations to listeners or folks that are watching on like how to navigate all this, advice out there that maybe it can be construed more as sort of blockers, or, what's your advice on navigating some of the information that's getting kind of, loudspeakered out there?
I think the best recommendation is to just get hands-on and do it yourself in whatever context is meaningful for you. And so, for example, I have my own use case where I have a bunch of cookbooks, and when I'm cooking, I don't know where all my recipes are for particular. If I have a bunch of extra, like, I don't know, cucumbers or something that I need to get rid of, it would be great for me to have real problem for you to solve. And what I want to do, or I'm trying to put together, is how do I scan my existing cookbooks and be able to pull up a recipe for cucumbers, or that uses cucumbers, so I can power through all of it before they spoil. Find something meaningful for you and give it a try. And I think that's more where it doesn't have to be a really sophisticated, create a new value stream for increasing customer traffic. Find something that's meaningful for you. I think that gives you a lot more context. There's a lot of information out there for tutorials, often free. They tend to be biased to particular flavors of data platforms. Okay. But the whole point is to get started. Best after you do it. And then I think that's where you improve the feedback and voices in the room. And you can tell from the feedback and the posts, not just on LinkedIn, but just talking to folks on Substack, other places, of folks who are really doing it versus someone who churned it through their chat GPT for whatever buzzwords to get their post for the day or whatever.
I love how we're calling out the folks who just want to post things. I mean, respect to folks who are like, they're really hustling out there. But I think as a reader, as a consumer, you also gotta dig in and find out the honest, no BS behind things.
That's right. Yep.
All right. Well,
lightning round.
We got, looking at our notes, we got so much stuff in here. Okay. First question. Is AI governance in the scope of the data governance teams?
Wow. I would say yes. If it has to be a binary, I would say yes, but I'll leave it at yes. Okay. It's got to start somewhere, and I would think that's there. The point is that it's a little bit more than that, and I think that's what everyone's learning.
Yeah, maybe they're the tip of the spear on it, but it's bigger. Right. It's bigger than just the data governance team.
Exactly.
Yeah. Interesting. Second question. Will there be, or is there already, interesting software and tools that are focused on AI governance?
Yes, and there's many, and I think it reflects the bias of the folks we've been talking about today as to how they're targeted and released into the market. I think there's a missed opportunity for the totality of it to do it efficiently, to serve, business goals, to bring all those voices into the room programmatically.
So a GRC bent to it.
Well, it's either GRC or it's more the data and analytics governance.
Oh, okay. So it could be biased in one direction or the other. Yeah.
And then that's my point, is like, I know that there are tools coming from each perspective that I haven't seen one that actually does all the things in one place.
Yeah. Okay. Interesting.
Without Frankensteining your way through it.
Yeah, no, it makes sense, because also the people building those tools come from one of the sides. They're not talking to the other folks. So it's like, yeah, this is gonna be interesting.
How Conway's law, it reflects the nature of the organization, or the good or bad, that the differences in them working separately.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, that's why I put like, to avoid getting to that Frankenstein moments, right? It's people in process, but also I think you hit the golden nugget that you shared today was on how we can start thinking about this from a product perspective, and that's how we start putting the people together. So, all right, next question: will the GRC concerns around AI overpower the AI governance conversation?
I think yes, in the sense that when and if there are regulatory compliance rules in whatever domain or jurisdiction you work in that have teeth, that forces the conversation pretty quickly. And that if you can't do business because of the consequences of what you've put out into the public domain, that gets folks' attention pretty quickly.
Yeah, the clickbait things, all that you don't want to be in the news, right? So you want to avoid being in the news.
Yeah, there's some interesting stuff going on with the FTC, and then as it relates to what's going on in Europe as well. It's still early days, but yeah, we'll see.
Yeah, good advice there. All right, last lightning round question. Can enterprises innovate around AI without a well-formed AI governance strategy?
I mean, I have my bias, but I'll say, can they? Yes. Will they do anything that someone wants to pay for that will add value for whatever the business strategy is? I'm going to say probably not. But I know that there are a lot of propeller heads out there that are, cobbling some stuff together to help them write code, or something that is exclusively on the technical side that doesn't rely upon so much data sets as it does processes. I know that there's a lot of that going on successfully.
Yeah.
It doesn't have as much of a lift or value like multiple at the end, but it's happening.
Yeah, no offense to the people who are enjoying playing around with the technology and finding cool use cases to throw this at, right? But if you really want to take it to the next level and do this in a scalable way, both that protects you and predictably creates value.
Right. Predictive and prescriptive outcomes are really where the value's at, where everybody's shooting for. And that's where there's a lot more. That's where you do absolutely need to have a full governance framework, AI or whatever you want to call it. That's where it matters.
Yep.
All right, Tim, takeaway time.
Takeaways. All right. So many good things. I'm going to do my best to keep this brief. So we started off with the honest, no BS question of what is AI governance and how is it related to data governance? And Karen, I think you did a great job trying to, really explain what it is and decomposing it, right? I think you had a lot of well thought out and carefully chosen words around AI governance is a reference to machine learning and generative AI data products, so both kind of across the different AI-oriented domains, and making sure that all the guideposts are met to make sure that your desired outcomes around ML and AI, your regulatory obligations, and your respect to human beings and their data is all achieved. And you also talked about the value and it being something that's easily understood. So I thought that was a broad but really effective definition with a lot of carefully chosen words there, which I think was very, very, very helpful for those who are listening and trying to understand what is this domain that they're exploring here, and what does it cover that is familiar but also not so familiar, right? Everyone has different definitions of governance, but there tends to be sort of two angles at governance in general, and certainly is very true with AI governance. More the GRC angle, governance, risk, and compliance angle, tends to be more kind of driven by legal and regulatory concerns, right? And then analytics governance, which is more driven around sort of the data insights and the data quality. Both of them obviously are very important to AI governance. We talked about the scope of AI governance, and I kind of posed the question: is like, are they really that different? And I think the conclusion is that they although they share a lot of the same foundations, there are some pretty major differences and new things to really explore and understand here. For example, you gave an example of a chat bot that was being used by Air Canada, right? And some of the complexity there with, the responses that it gave that then put, them into some, not just user experience jeopardy, but also probably into some legal jeopardy. And these are new issues around privacy. Privacy is not a thing that we're unfamiliar with, but, privacy and legal obligation, accuracy, quality, these things have a new light and new ways that we have to try to understand and enforce them in this situation. Training bias, content infringement, all of this is introducing some new things that as organizations we have to navigate. And of course, very importantly, value, right? Because we don't want to over-index just on the GRC side of this. We also want to make sure we're focused on the right use cases, leveraging our money in the right ways to have the biggest return on investment. So much more, but Juan, I'm going to pass it over to you. What were your big insights?
Yeah, so one of the things I'm just right now reading already so much is this Cinefin framework, right? So I'm looking up this five decision-making contexts or domains around clear, complicated, complex, chaotic, and confusion. And we should be able to apply this right now to AI, make sure that we're actually trying to solve the right problem and something that's being realistic. Again, I love to be realistic, right, about what problems this technology can actually solve well, right? The co-pilot experience, right? It's a good intern. Like we got to be honest and no BS about ourselves of what we can and should be doing right now, and bringing human beings at the right time. Again, this is also the clear takeaway here. We need to call out that we're also learning around this stuff, right? I mean, I'm going around doing hackathons with our customers because I'm like, we don't know. We need to figure this stuff out, and like let's all be honest about it, right? We're figuring it out. We need to be thoughtful about how AI agents are going to be used and how it affects people, right? We're just talking about cases like the Air Canada example right now. And I love this. Just ask yourself, is it realistic? I think this is a very important one. Then we talk about the new normal, or because of this balance of having like the analytics governance and the GRC, right? There's all this focus right now on cybersecurity and privacy, that this is going to be a new normal right there. But we need to find out how we can be efficient within this new normal, right? And also there's all these silos, so we need to be able to, how do we get everybody talking to each other? So the privacy folks actually know what's in the master data and how that can be what are the implications of that when it comes to privacy and so forth. Can we bring in the risk, the legal folks from the beginning? And people will ask, why even go do that? But that's kind of sounds weird to go do. We'll talk about that in a second here. But organizations will change when it's worth it. So when it's going to show their value, it's going to affect their P&L. So these are the things we need to take into account to make sure that people are actually going to go drive to make these changes. And I love how you said, like, we can provide multiples, being privacy aware and compliant. And the way to go do this, I mean, we need to start talking to each other, bringing all this stuff together. And we need to manage the politics, which is like, I got my goal, you got your goal to go do this. So I left that section. I was like, okay, I'm kind of understanding all the issues here. Like, how are we going to go address this? And I really, really am enjoying figuring out how to take the data product notion and as a way to tie all these different kind of political, cultural, people silos that you have. Because the data product is a verb, right? It's the process of how you engage a cross-functional team at the beginning so they can decide together, right? There's persona-driven perspectives, right? We want to have the highest value starting points are, you want to be able to go meet with those subject matter domain experts. You want to collaborate before writing a single line of code. And so we build this muscle memory of how we're talking to each other. Ask the right questions and solve the right problem at the beginning. This is where the Cinefin framework comes in. So I think these processes that we there are all these different processes, these frameworks. Like, this is the time to start saying, okay, we're going to go put this all together with the goal of how this is going to provide value to the organization, taking into account all the different perspectives and all the different kind of personas you have in your organization. And at the end of the day, you just got to get your hands dirty. Like, there's probably like things you can do for your own personal project, so you can kind of map it to what's working and what you're doing at your day-to-day job, and just figure it out and go have fun and play. Put your money where your mouth is. So, Karen, how did we do?
I feel like we could keep going for a long time, but I know we're out of time.
Yeah. Well, again, as always, this is all your content. We're just kind of taking notes from what you said. So thank you so much for this very valuable content you're sharing with everybody. But when I wrap it up, 3 questions for you at the end. What's your advice? Who should we invite next? And what resources do you follow?
You bet. What's my advice? This is non-technical, but I feel it's very powerful. Well, there was one thing that my dad taught me at a young age, which is you should learn to say please and thank you in every language. And I found that to be a great challenge, but also something that is really meaningful to, honor folks, regardless of if you can't say anything else. At a minimum, being able to say thank you and please is a big deal. So I'll throw that out there. Who should you invite next? I'm going to throw out, following along the data product themes we discussed, is Anna Bergevin. She's a senior data product manager at ResMed, and really kind of iterating along in her own experience of AI and how to make it applicable in like the real world along the way. So I think you'd have a great conversation with her.
I've been following her on LinkedIn. I really, really like her content.
She's awesome.
She's one of the things she's been experimenting a lot publicly is about, I'm going to use ChatGPT for this. Like, this worked. Oh, this sucks. And then she's doing this. So I've been giving her, we're chatting also with Shane Gibson. All right.
Yes, she's good too. Yes. And I joke for Anna that I told her, you're live streaming your whole learning experience, which I think the point is the authenticity of it. That we really are just kind of plodding along. You don't have to be a, polished expert. We really are.
This is the honest though, because we're all figuring this out.
Right.
And what I appreciate is that she's being public about it, right?
Let's learn together.
Learn together, yes. Right? That's awesome.
So as far as resources that I follow, that's a tough one. I am all over the place. Just off the top of my head right now, I'm a big fan of Benny Benford. He's on LinkedIn, and I think you can really tell that he has gone through it for a lot of the commentary he's made on LinkedIn primarily. I also am throwing out John Cook, who is a part of my data product group, but is really also really doing some, I'll say it, bleeding edge things and making some insights that I think are really powerful in terms of what does it actually look like when you are doing it, meaning the AI enablement for business benefit that someone actually, like a CEO, can get excited about. And then the last one is someone from the GRC space that I think has been really great about AI governance, specifically Katarina Corner. And she is really great about bringing in the context of whatever domain, whether healthcare, financial services, customer enablement or interactions of staying close to what's going on the GRC side and making it attainable and engaging. So I think she's great as well. Did I add all the questions? What do I have more?
Yeah, you did. Also, and then Katarina Corner, I want to please connect us with her. I'd love to go meet with her and also probably invite her to the podcast.
I think you'd have actually a good conversation because it's kind of like bringing together the two.
It would be great. And then both Benny and John have both been on the podcast and highly, highly recommend them. They're both. I love how Benny's also sharing publicly his entire kind of world, leaving from the corporate, starting his own kind of consultancy stuff. And John's also just a true, honest, no BS builder guy. I love that. So much stuff. There's so much great content and people to go follow. So Karen, thank you so much. Quick reminder, next week we have Scott Taylor, the Data Whisperer. We're going to have Scott is such an awesome guy to go watch. If you have not seen Scott, just look him up on YouTube. He's freaking awesome. And Karen, thank you so much. As always, thanks to Data.World who lets us do this every week. And this was a phenomenal discussion because it helped clear up a lot of the questions we've had. And I know many people listening too. Karen, have a great rest of your week. Thank you so much.
Karen. Thank you.